Warning, you're about to learn something new. The F5 tornado that changed meteorology forever. Is the title and thumbnail clickbait? No. There is one tornado that single-handedly changed the path of severe weather forecasting and had a huge impact on meteorology. And that tornado occurred about 70 years ago in Fargo, North Dakota. It took the lives of 12 people, injured over 100, and carved a path of destruction through the city. But what happened after the tornado is really what changed weather forever. Because one scientist looked at the wreckage and realized something that's kind of terrifying. A tornado doesn't just destroy a town, it kind of leaves fingerprints. And if you can read those fingerprints, you can start to understand how violent the tornado actually was. That scientist was Ted Fujita. Ted Fujita's study of the Fargo tornado helped lead to the Fujita Scale, the system that gave the world words like F1, F3, and F5, which means every time someone says the tornado was an EF5, they are using language that traces directly back to Ted Fujita and the F5 Fargo tornado. This is the story of the Fargo F5, the tornado that changed meteorology from wow, that was windy into actual forensic science. Because before Fujita, tornado intensity was a mess. There wasn't a clean universal way to rate tornadoes. One person might say that was a violent tornado. The other person might say, wow, that was a really strong tornado. Someone else might say, my Buick's in a tree. All useful information, but not a scientific scale. Meteorologists needed a way to translate wind speeds or destruction into data. And Fargo gave Fujita arguably his most important case study ever. June 20th, 1957, Fargo, North Dakota. When most people think violent tornado, they're thinking Oklahoma, Kansas, Texas, Tornado Alley. Places where the sky has some serious anger management issues. They don't usually picture North Dakota. But on this day, the atmosphere over the northern plains became extremely unstable. Warm, humid air, strong winds, changing direction with height, or wind shear. The environment was primed for strong, dangerous thunderstorms. And that evening, a powerful supercell produced multiple tornadoes. But one stood out amongst the rest. The Fargo tornado. It touched down west of the city and moved into North Fargo. And at times it was moving very slowly, which is one of the worst things a violent tornado can do. A fast tornado's bad, believe me, and they're harder to outrun. But the damage slow tornadoes can cause to whatever they're moving over, especially an F5 tornado, it's bad. The damage was catastrophic. Homes were destroyed, some were literally swept away, cars were thrown through the air. Schools, churches, neighborhoods, businesses were torn apart. The tornado carved through roughly 100 blocks of Fargo. This was not the shed is gone damage. This was Fargo's not on the map anymore damage. And as you could probably guess, for people who lived through it, it was devastating. After the storm had passed, Ted Fujita came to study it. At that time, Ted Fujita was a meteorologist at the University of Chicago. He had grown up in Japan and had been studying extreme weather in extreme detail for a long time. Fujita didn't look at storm damage like other people. A normal person looks at a destroyed neighborhood and thinks, wow, that's awful. Fujita would look at the same thing and think the debris pattern is trying to tell me something, which is brilliant, and at the time, people thought kind of crazy. He approached tornado damage like a detective. Where did the walls fall? What direction did debris travel? Were objects thrown outward, inward, sideways? Does the damage show one continuous tornado, or could there have been multiple vortices dancing around inside? Basically, while everyone else saw chaos, Fujita saw structure. He was becoming the Sherlock Holmes of tornado investigations. And Fargo was the perfect and at the same time terrible case study. There were photographs, aerial views, ground damage, clear debris patterns, and the tornado went directly through a developed area. Fujita went on to map the destruction in incredible detail. He studied how the tornado moved and how it changed and how different areas experienced different levels of destruction. And this was a massive leap because the tornado itself was gone. You can't interrogate a tornado. You can't put it in a chair under a lamp and say, where were you on the evening of June 20th? Unfortunately. So Fujita studied what remained. He treated the damage as evidence. And that idea helped reshape meteorology. Before this kind of work, tornadoes were mainly understood or heard about through eyewitness reports or broad descriptions. Eyewitness reports are limited for good information because if someone sees a tornado, they're usually not studying the wind structure, they're running or taking shelter. So damage became the record. A destroyed wall, a snapped tree, a swept away foundation, or a car thrown across a field. These were clues. And Fujita was very good at reading these clues. His Fargo study helped identify storm features and tornado behavior that meteorologists still talk about today. The National Weather Service notes that from studying the Fargo tornado, Fujita would later coin terms like wall cloud, tail cloud, and collar cloud, which is pretty cool. And these terms matter. They give meteorologists a much better vocabulary to describe what they're seeing, so they can study it, communicate it, and warn about it. Believe me, you do not want everyone having different names for the same feature. Forecasting would be like a group project from hell. Fujita gave storm science a shared language. knowledge. But his most famous contribution came later, the Fujita Scale. Introduced in the early 1970s, the Fujita Scale rated tornadoes from F0 to F5, largely based on damage. From F0 being light damage all the way up to F5, which was incredible damage. And incredible damage is one of the most understated phrases in science. Quite honestly, the Fujita Scale was revolutionary. It gave meteorologists, emergency managers, researchers, and the public a common way to describe tornado intensity. Suddenly, big tornado wasn't enough. Was it F2? Was it F4? Was it F5? Because trust me, those are very different conversations. F2 tornadoes can tear a roof off of a home, and an F5 can literally rip a home off of its foundation, and in some cases rip the foundation up. And as you know, the Fargo tornado was later rated an F5, the highest level. Fujita's work studying Fargo became the foundation for how he thought about extreme damage. This is why Fargo matters so much. It wasn't just a terrible tornado, and believe me, it was terrible. It became a lesson. A violent storm had written its behavior across a city, and Fujita learned how to read it. It of course completely changed how meteorologists investigated tornadoes moving forward. Instead of only asking what happened, they could ask questions like, how strong was it? How did the wind move? Was the damage consistent? Were there smaller vortices? What does the pattern reveal about the storm? That's forensic meteorology. And that's why Ted Fujita became known as Mr. Tornado, even though most of you probably think that's Reed Timmer. There's a good argument for him as well. The dude's a legend. Anyways, Ted Fujita's work did not stop with tornadoes. He later made major discoveries about downbursts and microbursts, dangerous bursts of wind that can cause destruction at the ground level, but can also take down planes. So this wasn't a guy who had one good idea and then was like, peace. Ted Fujita was a man who kept looking at violent weather and saying, I think the atmosphere is hiding something. And he was right. Now, the Fujita Scale was not perfect, and it's had its controversies. Controversies may not be the right word. It estimated wind speed from damage, which is a little flawed because not all buildings are built the same and they don't all use the same material. A tornado hitting poorly built structures can make the damage look much worse than it actually was. A tornado moving over an open field may be extremely powerful but leave little evidence. The scale basically depended on what the tornado hit, which means a tornado could be out in a cornfield doing Olympic level violence and science would be like, best I can do is F1. And that's why the United States eventually replaced the Fujita Scale with, drumroll please, the Enhanced Fujita Scale in 2007. The Enhanced Fujita Scale uses more detailed damage indicators and better engineering knowledge. But the basic idea is still Fujita's idea. Read the damage, estimate the intensity, and turn destruction into data. That is the legacy, and it all comes back to Fargo. The Fargo F5 showed how much can be learned from a tornado even after it's gone. It helped prove that tornado damage was not random confetti. It has patterns, structure, and meaning. And Fujita was one of the first people who was brilliant, patient, and maybe weird enough to decode it. And that is what science often is. Standing in the aftermath of something terrible and saying, what can we learn from this? Not to make the disaster less tragic or turn human suffering into a little chart, but to make the next warning better, the next building safer, the next forecast smarter, and the next community more prepared. That is why this tornado changed meteorology. It helped move tornado science from description to investigation. From a terrible storm came through to here is how the storm behaved. From chaos to clues. From wreckage to a scale the entire world would recognize. So when people talk about an EF5 tornado today, they're taking the legacy of Ted Fujita, walking through the destruction of a tornado and realizing it left a message. A horrible and violent message, but a readable one. And once meteorologists learned how to read it, tornado science was never the same. The Fargo tornado destroyed part of a city, but in the wreckage, Fujita found a new way to understand the sky. And that is how one of the worst tornadoes in North Dakota history helped change weather forever. If you're still here, I love you guys. I appreciate you sticking around. If you like this type of content, don't forget to subscribe, like the video, share the video. I want to keep making content like this. I think it's a blast, and I need all the support I can get. Let me know what I should make a video about next. I'm serious. I'm going to take the comments into consideration. Also, let me know if you think there's another storm that made a huge impact on meteorology. Doesn't have to be a tornado, just any storm. You guys are awesome. Peace.